A sheep on its back is a sheep that is already dead. It just hasn't stopped breathing yet. In the brutal vocabulary of the high country, this is called being cast. It sounds like a gentle word, something related to shadows or stones, but for a ewe in the wild, it is a definitive death sentence. There is no more desperate sight in the wilderness than an animal designed for the mountains lying helpless in a small depression in the grass, its forelegs flailing uselessly at the sky, unable to find the gravity it needs to survive. This is the gravity of the fall. It isn't a grand cinematic leap off a cliff. It's often just a small stumble, a minor slip into a hollow while trying to find a better tuft of grass. But once that center of gravity shifts, the world turns upside down. And for a sheep, there is no way back. We like to think of our own failures as things we can eventually climb out of with enough effort and enough time. We believe in the power of the human will to right the ship, but the anatomy of a sheep tells a different story. When a sheep is cast, the physics of its own body become its executioner. Gases begin to build rapidly in the rumen, the first chamber of its stomach. Without the ability to stand and release that pressure, the stomach expands like a balloon, eventually pressing against the lungs and cutting off the circulation of blood to the limbs. Within hours, the sheep will suffocate under the literal weight of its own existence. It is trapped in a prison of its own wool and weight. It is alive, it is conscious, and it is completely, utterly stuck. The frantic bleating begins, a high-pitched, terrifying sound that echoes off the canyon walls. It's a signal of distress, but in the high country, a cry for help is also an invitation to dinner. The wilderness has no mercy for the fallen. The moment you are stuck, the world begins to calculate your end. Nature does not pause to offer a hand. It simply moves in to reclaim the nutrients. From the jagged branches of a nearby pine, a crow lands, tilting its head, watching the rhythmic struggle of the ewe's legs. It is patient. It knows that a cast sheep cannot defend itself. It knows the eyes and the soft tissue are the first things to go. Higher up, on the ridgeline, the predator lens of the wilderness narrows. A coyote, gray and lean, creeps through the tall grass. It doesn't need to hunt today. It only needs to wait. It watches the shepherd's flock from the shadows, looking for the one that has become isolated, the one that has tipped over. This is the reality of being cast down. It is a state of total exposure. When you are on your back, you cannot see the horizon. You can only see the sky and the things descending from it. The sounds of the forest, the harsh caws of the birds, the low, menacing growls in the brush, the snapping of twigs, become a symphony of impending doom. You are no longer a member of the flock. You are a carcass in waiting. To be cast is to realize that your own strength is not only insufficient, it is actually the thing killing you. The harder the sheep struggles to right itself, the more gas builds, the more the heart strains, and the faster the end approaches. The wilderness is a cold accountant, and it is currently adding up the cost of your collapse. But the shepherd does not leave the tally to the wolves. He is not a distant observer. He is a constant surveyor of the horizon. He knows the count. He knows when the rhythm of the flock is off. He notices the gap in the line where a heavy, wool-laden ewe should be. He doesn't wait for the vultures to circle before he begins to move. He runs. He moves through the brush with a focused, rugged urgency, his heavy boots crushing the same shale that caused the stumble. He sees the crow take flight as he approaches, and he knows exactly what he is looking at. He finds her in the depression, her eyes rolled back, her breath coming in shallow, panicked bursts. He doesn't just stand over her and offer a lecture on how to walk better next time. He doesn't judge the sheep for choosing the wrong patch of grass. He acts. He restores my soul. In the original language of the Shepherd King, that phrase doesn't mean a poetic feeling of peace. It literally means, he brings me back. It is a gritty, physical, exhausting labor. The shepherd reaches down and grabs the heavy, oil-soaked wool. He puts his shoulder into the work, heaving the dead weight of the animal over. But the rescue isn't over when the sheep is right side up. When he rolls her over, she doesn't just stand up and walk away. Her legs are numb. The circulation has been cut off for too long, and they are as useless as stilts. She collapses back into the mud, her head lolling. This is where the shepherd's work becomes intimate. He kneels in the dirt, regardless of the grime or the flies. He begins to rub her legs. He uses his large, calloused hands to massage the limbs, his rhythmic rubbing creating heat and friction to force the blood back into the extremities. You can hear his heavy breathing and his low, comforting grunts as he works. He is talking to her, a low drone of reassurance that counters the chaos of the coyote's growl. He is pulling the life back into her body by sheer force of will. He lifts the weight so the blood can flow again. He restores the soul by restoring the body. This is the part of the rescue we often overlook. We want the miracle to be instantaneous. We want to be flipped over and immediately be back at the front of the line. But the shepherd knows the recovery takes time. He knows the transition from cast to capable is a slow, painful process of pins and needles. He stays in the mud until the sheep can feel her own feet again. He doesn't leave her alone to recover while the scavengers are still watching from the tree line. He stays until the restoration is complete. Finally, the sheep takes a shaky step, then another. Her knees buckle, but she doesn't hit the ground because the shepherd is right there. He walks beside her, his hand resting firmly on her side, providing the balance she lost. He is guiding her back to the flock, not at the pace of the strongest ram, but at the pace of the broken. This is the walking out of the stumble. It is a slow, methodical return to the path. The shepherd doesn't just save you from the hole, he saves you from the journey back. You weren't meant to carry the weight of your own failures. The design of the sheep and the design of the human spirit is not built for self-correction once we've truly fallen. We are built to be part of a flock, and we are built to be under the care of a protector. When you are cast down, when the world is upside down, and you are suffocating under the weight of your own choices or your own heavy burdens, the shepherd is the only one who can flip your world right side up. He is the only one who will run into the dark, fend off the coyote, and kneel in the dirt to rub the life back into your tired soul. The sound of the wilderness begins to change. The harsh caws of the scavengers fade as the shepherd's presence dominates the clearing. The low, menacing bass of the mountain's threat is replaced by a triumphant, low-frequency orchestral anthem, the sound of a life reclaimed. The sheep is no longer a cast sheep. She is a followed sheep. She is no longer a death sentence walking. She is a testimony to the shepherd's vigilance. As they rejoin the flock, the sun is beginning to hit that golden hour, illuminating the dust kicked up by the thousands of hooves. The danger hasn't vanished. The mountains are still jagged, and the wolves are still hungry. But the balance has been restored. The shepherd has never lost a sheep he came to save, not because the sheep are good at staying on their feet, but because he is good at picking them up. He knows your frame, he knows your tendencies, and he knows exactly how to reach into the depression where you've fallen and bring you back. The trail ahead is long. There are steeper climbs waiting and darker shadows ahead. But for this sheep, the lesson is etched into her very bones. The shepherd is stronger than the fall. He is the restorer of the soul, the lifter of the head, and the one who walks you through the stumble until your legs are strong enough to run again. In the next episode, we will look at the tools of this trade, the instruments the shepherd uses to keep the flock from falling in the first place, and the weapons he uses to ensure that when they do, they are protected. We will explore the dual nature of his authority, the iron and the wood, the rod and the staff, one for the enemy and one for the friend. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.